So, nearing the end of the book, in part three, chapter 8 really just lays out some challenges and opportunities that minority women entrepreneurs face, which was really interesting to read about. I think we can all think of some things that those women might come across as challenges, but there were definitely some things in the book that I did not realize that they listed as challenges that these women might face. So just to kind of take you guys through some of those, the biggest one obviously was kind of this idea of this double standard on what to prioritize in business. The chapter started out with saying that it is almost normal, well, not almost, it is definitely normal for men to prioritize making money over doing social good when it comes to business. And if men prioritize doing social good, then they're almost seen as weak and as inferior. But women are told to not prioritize money and not prioritize making a profit, but instead are expected to provide some kind of vital social good to their society. So kind of this first challenge is really just unpacking this idea of this double standard of men versus women, and just unpacking the idea that women can't do both. And if they prioritize money, then they aren't taken seriously and they're seen as doing something that is masculine in nature. And if they prioritize doing social good, then it's undervalued and not taken seriously because business is inherently to make a profit. So they kind of have to tiptoe this line of obviously making a profit so that they can provide for themselves and for their families, but also wanting to provide some kind of social good for their culture. So again, they're criticized for going against this idea of doing rational business, which, as described in the book, is this idea of doing business for the purpose of making a profit. And many of these minority women don't do that. They're finding things that their community and their society needs, and they're coming up with these business ideas to fill in those gaps that haven't been filled in by other businesses. So it is a social good, but it also ends up being quite profitable for them. So men, in the same regard, are seen as, when they provide social goods for their communities and their societies, they're seen as providing something that is inherently feminine, which is kind of obviously the stereotype that the business world has put on these ideas and on these business practices that are providing social good. We've labeled them as genders. If you make a profit, you are masculine, and if you do a social good, you are practicing business that is inherently feminine. So that all just kind of reinforces this idea that pro-social work is undervalued and it is not taken seriously. Men don't want to be a part of it, and that makes it more difficult for a lot of these minority women to kind of get off the ground with their businesses if they have no men backing or no kind of support from the men in their community, or all of those things that tie in socially, they tie in economically. It's harder to get funding for them. So they really just face a lot of cultural and societal and global stereotypes that we've placed on business practices, which is unfair. But the cool thing is that a lot of these women are almost fueled by that challenge. They want to break the norm of what business, or what the world tells us that business should be. So a lot of them are fighting to kind of break those societal norms in their cultures that go against, or they're fighting against the idea that pro-social good and pro-social business is something that should not be masculine and should not be profit-making. So those are the challenges that they face. Obviously, there's so many more, and one of the discussion questions that we want you guys to answer is kind of what other ideas you might think or have heard of challenges that minority women might face, or just women in general. So we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit more in the discussion post. Hopefully you guys can come up with some other things, or if you interpreted something differently from the book, we would love to hear your responses on that. So definitely make sure that you check out that discussion question.